Hey, my name's Erik Begg. I'm known musically usually as Mr. Erik. Currently, I'm a rhythm guitarist for Backbreaker. I am the guitarist and singer-yeller kind of guy for Wiggler. And I've got a new thing coming up. I've done a bunch of solo stuff as well under the name Mr. Erik. I've got a new thing coming up called the Hysterics, which I shelved for a little while in 2016, but I'm bringing that back out for 2023. Born in Hamilton, raised in Burlington. I spent 13 years in Vancouver because there was a good music scene, some skateboards, some recreational horticulture, and moved back to Hamilton, spent a few years there running in the glory days of the Hammer, about 2005 to, I don't know, 2012 or so. And now I live out in Lebanon, Ontario with a bunch of nice Mennonites, 9 cats, a lovely wife, and pepper plants. All right, so influences. I'm going to have to throw a direct acknowledgement and some love out at my parents. My dad was a university professor teaching cognitive psychology. My mom was a high school teacher specializing in math and English, particularly English literature. But she took about a dozen years off to raise my sister and I. And so they both came from a hippie background. And family was always musical. Again, from the hippie background, my dad was really into stuff that he could play with a finger pick and an acoustic guitar. So John Prine was his go-to, but also Chris Christopherson, a bit of John Denver, a bit of Bob Dylan, some of that political, hippie, I don't know, respect people kind of stuff. Stuff that wasn't quite as much into the pop realm, but more, I don't know, cerebral, for lack of a better term, or socially aware. And with both parents being educators and my dad being a research scientist, they were both very encouraging that I should learn and explore and not necessarily conform to the expectations, but learn who I am and learn what the world is and learn how things work, ask as many questions as possible. And why not are both valid questions. So I'm going to give some love there to my family. All right. So as I mentioned in the last question, I've been listening or playing along with music for a very young age. When I was 3 years old, my mom dressed me up in a little disco suit and took me to the A&A Records upstairs in the Burlington Mall. And I had to walk up to the counter and sing, "That's the way, I like it, to get my KC and the Sunshine Band 7-inch. And then after that, it was Bay City Rollers. And then I got really into Kiss. Because when you're 5 years old, having a space vampire playing bass is fucking cool. So I got really into Kiss. And then spent a bunch of years really tracking Dr. Demento and got into Weird Al and all that jazz. And then, well, no, not jazz, but then I got into metal. It was a little sidebar where I got into metal in grade 8 because everyone else did. And Motley Crue, "Shout at the Devil," yeah.
Sister, quite right.
Yeah, quite right. All that stuff. Just the cheesy metal you wear when you're in grade 8, and you've got your super tight pants on, you got your 3/4 sleeve like baseball shirt. This is Rush, Moving Pictures, and all that. So yeah, that was my grade 8. And then I got into high school and I thought, metal crap isn't going to float. I got to be a preppy because Square Pegs was on TV and I knew how it went. So I got some shaker knit sweaters and started listening to Top 40. It was kind of an ill fit for me, but I was also an ill fit for high school, so the shaker net sweaters didn't get me into any of the cool cliques. So we were just getting Much Music in Canada, so I started watching that and seeing as the bands were coming out. And the first band that sort of struck me was Think Man. It was a little different than a lot of the pop music I was listening to because the lyrics, they sort of prompted me to think about stuff. And I really liked that angle. And so I started tracking stuff that made me think or stood a little bit out of the center. Things like REM, Fall on Me. That song really struck me as being a song written about acid rain, So it's something that's written about an issue and not just girls or cars or, as much as I love the B-52s, the Love Shack, really. So it was something about the issues that sort of, as I was coming into the teens, it gave me almost a purpose. And then from there I got into Love and Rockets, and then there was The Cure, and then The Clash, and then the Sex Pistols for a while, and I was really into the band for a couple of years until it sort of dawned on me that using a swastika as a marketing tool was a little off-putting. I'm not really cool with that. But around that time also I heard the Dead Kennedys. And I've got to mention The Exploited. It's another band that when you're 15, you've never heard any other punk bands, Punk's Not Dead is the best thing you've ever heard. When you've heard 10 other bands, you realize it's terrible. So I apologize for throwing shade at The Exploited. I know Waddy's in a rough bit of health right now. Respect to the band and everything they've done, I really don't like them. The Exploited made me want to go out and smash things. But when I heard the Dead Kennedys, that channeled all the teen angst and all the shaker knit sweater rejection and all the anger, and it gave me something positive. So instead of going out there and saying, oh, fuck the Queen, and she's a wanker, and she can't, whoa, 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 live at the White House, oh, Genevieve, all for fucking wankers, maximum rock and roll fucking wankers. Why not start a band? Instead of saying stuff sucks, propose an alternative. As anarchism without a replacement idea is just intellectually bankrupt. So the Dead Kennedys inspired me to quit smashing stuff and yelling about stuff and start a band and try to fix it. And 35 years later, I don't know if I've gotten any better or any worse, but the world still has problems, and I'll still write songs about them. So, the concerts. I have an inkling somewhere in the back of my head that at some point I probably saw somebody like Raffi at the Burlington Library.
Sharon Lois and Bram.
Yeah, it might have been Sharon Lois and Bram. I would have preferred Sharon Lois and Bram Stoker because that would have been awesome. But you get what you get. So the first show I've got a concrete memory of was at Exhibition Stadium at the CNE. I went in with my friend Kit, and his parents went and saw the baseball game, and we went and saw Glass Tiger with I as the opener. And when I was 12, that was the best thing in the world. It was just as I transitioned out of metal and got into that, top 40, good CanCon stuff and a red cassette. And then my next concert was 3 years later, and there had been a whole sea change and everything. And that's when the Dayglow Abortions were playing at Stars in Burlington. The opening bands were The Brute Creation and Babies with Rabies, the two bands that then eventually merged together into Hockey Teeth. But I was there as a 15-year-old in 1987, looking at these guys up on stage, the teenagers in the opening bands. I think the oldest guy was 20, looking at these guys saying, these guys are about my age. Well, they kind of suck. I can probably do this. And so, I went home and started writing lyrics. So that show, it got me a concrete idea of punk rock and what I could do with it. It also got me my second girlfriend. Nice to meet you, Kelly. Hope you're well. And a third win is it changed my life completely, because as the punk rock show was starting to get going and the Dayglow started to do the Dayglow thing back in the Fetus days, the crowd just started to do the punk rock thing. And the club owners or managers or some authority figures got freaked out and pulled the plug a couple of songs in and pulled the PA. And the band kept playing. So they cut the power, and the band kept playing. And the only thing you could hear were the drums. And so we're all these angry 15-year-olds there to see a punk rock show, and they shut it down. So all the bathrooms got smashed, and big chunks of urinals on the floor. So that was my introduction to punk rock. And yeah. All right, favorite shows. Well, I got to throw a nod out to the Dayglow Abortions. I'm not really a metal guy. I don't like the crossover stuff, so I'm not really a big Dayglows fan, but that was a sea change of a show. I think the next one that really got me was maybe about 1991 or so at the Apocalypse Club in Toronto, where I saw,
Sick of it all.
no, not Sick of It All. The headliner was the Melvins with support Jesus Lizard and Helmet. And Melvins played for a couple of hours. Buzz broke the neck off his guitar and dropped it, and Dale and Joe just kept going. It was incredible. Not Scratch Acid, Jesus Lizard. David Yao was sitting up on the back of a chair, drinking beer cans and crushing them and throwing them at people. Someone gave him a fruit basket. So, why do you give a band a fruit basket at a punk rock show? So I think he had a bite of an apple, but spent the rest of he was pegging people off with fruit for the rest of the show, except for when he hauled his scrotum out and stuck a banana in there, and oh yeah. And I was with a Mormon friend of mine, so good times for both of us. Then other great shows, Vancouver, 93, 94 or so. The rip-offs with Teen Generate. I love Teen Generate. Loudest thing I've ever heard. Had a headache for a week. I saw Ween at the Starfish Room with Caius as the opener.
Oh, nice.
Ween played 3.5 hours. They've gone on record saying it's one of the best shows they've ever played. I can attest to that. Holy shit. Alice Donut a couple of times. Once with Ultra Bidet and No Means No. That kicked ass. I've seen No Means No more times than I can count, including a show that they came out, played a No Means No set, came back, did a full set as the Hanson Brothers, and then another encore as No Means No. Just to touch on No Means No, I'll jump back to the Rivoli in Toronto about 1990 when they played with the X, where they were playing two lips, two lungs, and one tongue. And you know, you get that little bit in the middle where you had Andy on the bass, John on the drums, and Rob was playing guitar. So when they hit that note and Andy hit that, the band stopped. And Andy and John broke into some jazz. Doom, 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 doom. And the guitarist from the X came out, put down a folding chair. Rob sat down on the guitar, put a towel around his neck, shaved his head, got up, showed him a mirror. He said, yeah, put the guitar back on, Benny, and the song started back up again. That was awesome. Leaving for Europe the next day, he needed the tour haircut because you don't get to shower or wash or clean your socks or anything. So back up to Vancouver, hit a couple more of the really good ones. There was, I saw the Boredoms play at Richards on Richards. The Boredoms are fantastic. One of my all-time favorite bands. Seeing them live was like a kaleidoscope of anarchist calisthenics set to sound. It was incredible. I'm going to leave you off with one more that really, really sticks with me. Probably the best show I've seen. And I believe it was the first show that the Hives played in North America. It was the Smugglers with the Hives and the International Noise Conspiracy. It was 3 bands. Each band was a 5-piece. Each band had a matching uniform on stage. It killed. Dennis Lykeson from International Noise Conspiracy at one point took his tambourine on a tour and climbed up the stacks into the balcony so he could dance with the people upstairs. That killed. And actually, while I'm touching on International Noise Conspiracy, I've got to pull in a show they did with Rocket from the Crypt. Holy shit, Rocket from the Crypt is a good band. And then springboarding off that, I got another couple more because I've seen so many killer shows. Man, I love punk rock. There was the Mooney Suzuki with Rocket from the Crypt. That killed. And Mooney Suzuki became one of my favorite bands. I saw them come back a few months later and headline with Sahara Hot Nights as an opener. And just because at some point you're going to watch this, I know Billy Oldschool is out there. I have seen Captured by Robots. That was a fun show. So the craziest shit I've seen at a show. Well, I've got 2 I'm going to reference for you. One of them is kind of, actually, whatever. They're both their own separate things, so let's just go on it. One is one is the other. How's that? Okay, so at university around 1991, 92, we had a band called Moist. not the shitty band from Vancouver. We had a bit of a legal battle with them. We had a umlaut over the oi, so over our o, so we technically, it was the oi, the moi. So technically we were moist rather than moist. But when the shitty band from Vancouver, who, psst, as they told me, they used to be a bar rock cover band from Peterborough called Moist Vagina. So don't believe the shit about the rain in Vancouver. That's not what David Usher said on the phone when he called up and said, dude, you got to change your band name, David. Anyway, with our band Moist, garage punk, whoopa! Next beer. So
Holy shit.
good times. And
Okay, keep going.
so that's Steve off camera having his pint. It's a bit of Guinness this time, if you can believe it. I'd call that a world record. But my roommate, I'm just about to talk about here from Moist, we used to brew beer together, usually a bock. So it was quite a bit like the Guinness that is going down back just behind the camera here. But the important thing is that we were a garage punk band with a bongo player. We did a show, I think it was the Alma Combo, where our bass player, I'm not going to call his name out to embarrass him because he probably has a professional career or something at this point, but thought it was a really good idea to play the show on acid and wear 30 t-shirts. So he showed up, skinny guy wearing all these t-shirts with his Rickenbacker, and after every song he put down the bass, take off a shirt, and play the next song in a different shirt. And he got skinnier and sweatier in this pile of white shirts by the end of the show. And then on acid was trying to find them all and put them into his gig bag. I thought that was pretty funny. And I thought he was crazy for doing it. But more recently, at Jimmy Jazz, among the classiest venues I had ever played, it's the pride and joy of downtown Guelph. We did a Stand Against Fear show there a few years ago, where I was used to sitting at the back playing the drums and looking out at lights, and occasionally I see Nathan's ass and then Aaron's ass. And I don't see anything other than Nathan's ass and Aaron's ass. So I'm there playing the drums, and the two asses part for a second, and right there at the front table, just at the back at where you would put a pit in a bar that had a pit, and not just a patch of floor. But right there in the chair was a very inebriated young lady masturbating under the table. And I'm playing the drums thinking, the fuck am I seeing out there? And I play with my glasses off because drums are big, and I can't see anything that's close to me, but things that are farther away are somewhat better. So I'm playing the drums saying, the fuck am... Okay, bar time. And band's going on, and then she gets up, and they used to, so before the pandemic, so there was a pool table still, and she came over and got on the pool table. I'm playing the drums, and what the fuck is going on in here?
Playing something else.
Did I just walk into a Russ Meyer movie or something? What's going on here? Where's the... Nathan's playing the wrong bass line. I'm playing the wrong drums. We need to start the cheesy funk on this. And then the bouncer sort of figured out what was going on and came over, scooped her up under the armpits, walked her outside, and plunk, just like Fred Flintstone setting out the saber-toothed tiger, plunk, there on the park bench. And I was in that little cutout there playing the drums, looking up. This is surreal. And then I think she had a moment of lucidity and just kind of stood up and then sprinted up McDonald, up the road. And that was the end of it. And then the asses came back together, and I looked at the asses for the rest of the show. Life of a drummer. All right. So for this, I'm old. I've been hit on the head a few times. So I've had to make a list here of the bands I've been in, just so I can keep track of the bands I've been in from 1987 until now. So I first started, my friend Olaf and I tried to put a band together called Mick Dix, and it never really got anywhere, but shortly around that time, reference back to that Dayglow Abortion show with the Brute Creation and Babies with Rabies. Still mad respect for that show, but that made me want to actually make something concrete and figure out how to do it. So I knew a friend named Bo and a friend named Jeff. This gentleman, Jeff Anderson, currently of the Responsibles. I went to high school with the guys, and I overheard them at Nelson High School in Burlington at the Smokers Pit. They were talking about putting a band together, and I bugged them about being the singer. And I bugged them and I bugged them and I bugged them and bugged them and bugged them until they said, all right, you can audition if you shut up. And no one else showed up. And I got the job by default. 35 years later, I got the job by default. I didn't have a microphone. Nobody had a microphone. But I had an old set of headphones from the 60s I pinched from my parents. And so it had the old school microphonic speakers. So I could put the headphones over my head like this, like some kind of like blue velvet thing, and I sing singing into these headphones. Oh, it's crap. No, I messed up my glasses. That's awesome. But singing into the headphones, and when we played it back, it was a stereo cassette recording where I had some yelling and we had the guitars on the other side, and we played our own song, and it didn't suck too bad. So we became the Turd Burglars. And there we go, the Turd Burglars. First band. And a few years later, things were different back then, where things weren't as progressive or comfortable as they are now. Everyone who's been in the band has come a hell of a long way since then. But one of the four of us wasn't really cool with, hey, wait a minute, what? Turd Burglar means what? We got to change that. No, man, that's no. So we became Four Story Forehead, which we chose that name because it really meant nothing. And so that was like 1987 to about 1991. About 1988, 89 or so, we picked up a drum kit from a garage sale for $25. I didn't have a bottom snare head, the hi-hat didn't work, and the cymbal had a big crack in it. But fuck it, we started a band. So that was the Librarians of Chaos. And I sort of played drums, but I didn't really know how because I was just kind of just twitching and stuff. Then I got a 7-inch record from a couple British bands. The Apostles on side 1 and Statement on side 2. And I hated the falsetto Apostles. It sounded like a punk rock Bronski beat. But on the other side, Statement, it was a really nondescript kind of punk rock song. But the liner notes, one guy played all the instruments. And I thought, whoa, you could do that? Holy shit, I'm going to do that. And about that time, a friend of mine, he was transitioning from female to male, ran into a bit of problems with her parents who weren't cool with it. So he went out west for a while, left a bunch of gear at my house. So suddenly I had a guitar with some pedals and a 4-track and a Casio keyboard, and I created the Ayatollah Fonzarelli as a one-man band. And threw that onto a compilation cassette, because figure why not. Then I got into industrial a bit, not through ministry, but through Tit Wrench. Because you got to go down the alternative channels. I got into Tit Wrench, and Ayatollah Fonzarelli became industrial as Suckass. About the same time, maybe about 1990, 91, my friend Mike and I put a band together. It was almost like the Happy Flowers, with drums and guitar and ridiculous songs. And we were called Captain Poultry. And the plan there was to offend everyone. And most people got through, about halfway through side 1 of the demo we did, to the song Recycle Corn. And that's usually where they turned it off. Yeah, no one wants to recycle corn.
Nope.
And there were 2 very brief one-off bands. Again, about 1991, maybe 92. First one came a circumstance. There was a punk rock show going on, I think at Willy Wogs in Hamilton. 2 of the bands, 2 straight edge bands, couldn't make it across the border. So I think it was just Chokehold and I think somebody else. So 2 bands from Ohio got stuck at the border. So of course they got, is there anyone here who has a band? Is there anyone in the crowd who can get up and play? And Craig and Helen, and I can't remember the third person from Rabid Defiance, they got up on stage and they played. And then the other band, give the lead to Greg Plant. He said, we've got a band called Weaselhead. Okay, you guys can play. Then we started assembling the band out of people who happened to be in the crowd at the time, got up on the stage and made up a bunch of noise on the spot and really pissed off a lot of people. My favorite thing about it, it's still one of my all-time favorite shows because we got straight edge guys so pissed off they were pelting us with beer cans. Oh, it's beautiful. And so much fun, so much fun.
Different if they're empty and they drank them.
Oh, yeah, yeah. stupid straight edge guy, you drink your cans first. I know the youth of today and your big biceps and stuff. You crush the full cans and chuck them, but you guys are bullies, you know. Okay, that was a fun show. They started chanting Weaselhead sucks, so the next song became Weaselhead sucks. Good time. John Krutoff, he was one of the guys on stage there. Greg Plant was the only other person I remember. Then we decided to start a feud with Chokehold just to be assholes, because why not cause a bit of drama in the scene? So we picked Turd Burglars, or Four Story Forehead at that time, picked a very arbitrary fight with a band that had done nothing wrong, just for the hell of it. So we started our feud with Chokehold. They were doing a compilation cassette of various straight edge bands. So again, John Krutoff on bass. He was doing Diet Society zine, and he had a band called Cause. We came together with a few other people and made a joke song under the name X Argue X, which I figured was a perfect straight edge name, and did a song called Edge Proud. Don't you drink? You want brink? Don't you drink? You no think. Straight, hard, edge, proud. And it was an attempt to parody youth of today, but youth of today is their own parody. Proud of who I am, what I say, what I do. Proud of who I am, what I say, what I do. Oh, for fuck's sake, Ray. Okay. So that was Argue, with apologies to Chokehold if you're out there somewhere. Then, seeing the X with No Means No, and their very eclectic take on how to play instruments, and playing a guitar flat so you could stick a knife in the pickups and wiggle it and go stuff like that. It convinced me there was a whole nother way to make music. So I started a noise group called Rats Eat Children. And it ended up going on for a couple of years, about 93 to about 95. Played 9 shows, did 1 demo cassette, didn't have any songs. The premise at the time is that we would set the drum machine going either as fast as it would go or as slow as it would go. We'd smoke a bunch of weed, we'd get up on stage, set up strobe lights so nobody could see us, and then start off at a nice little blues jam with between 2 and 9 of us on stage. And about a minute in, we start turning on every effects pedal we have and feeding back and creating this wall of noise until everyone leaves. Every show we gave away a pound of lard as a door prize. Congratulations! And pose for the picture. Your pound of lard. So that was Rats Eat Children. Then, 93, I moved to Vancouver. That's where Rats Eat Children started off. August 1993 was when Wiggler was born. I tried to put a band together. I was looking for drummers. I was looking for bassists. Actually, I'd just seen Ned's Atomic Dustbin play in Toronto before I moved out. So I wanted a lead and rhythm bassist because I thought that was pretty cool. And I couldn't find anyone. Everyone I met was a drummer, or it was a guitarist from Ontario. And I was a guitarist from Ontario. But I had helped myself to my dad's 4-track, and I had a drum machine. So I started sketching songs out for when I found the band. And that turned out to be 17 years. So Wiggler is still going now, still an active band. In a few months it's going to be 30. Wiggler, I jumped into another band called, I'll pause there for a second. I'll keep Wiggler as it is. I played bass briefly for a band out in Vancouver called Bacon. I'm also a pretty crappy bassist, so I got a call to audition for DOA. I got an invitation. Awesome. So I'm bragging for that because being in DOA for an hour playing in Joey's garage was so friggin' cool. Yeah. Like playing The Prisoner and playing Rich Bitch and America the Beautiful. I didn't make the cut because I'm a hack musician, particularly on the bass. But fuck yeah, I was a DOA for an hour. Awesome. Then when I moved back to Ontario in 2005, I met a guy named Dave Lido, formerly of Mud Skippers and Frequency out in Montreal. And we started talking a bit about music, and he said, I'm a bassist, and showed me his bass clef tattoo. And I said, really? Same spot on my arm, I've got a guitar. You're a guitarist, I'm a bassist, we should do something. And he's been the bassist for Wiggler since then. Well, since almost then. He had a band called Methamine. I'd been running for a long time. Sort of like a bit of Peter Gabriel, bit of 9 Inch Nails. I came in as a rhythm guitarist and played mostly feedback and effects with a semi-acoustic guitar held up to an amp and then hammered on and sliding notes and stuff. We had to play together for about a year. Mark Bertola was the drummer. We became really good friends and had a really good dynamic. We did a tour, sold out everything, sold out all the merch. We got invited back everywhere, and then the band broke up. But we figured the three of us, we had a good dynamic. We liked each other, so we kept playing. So we jammed for a little while under the name the Hong Kong Chop Shop Trio, because we were jamming above a very dubious Hong Kong motor shop out in the Junction area of Toronto. And Mark and Dave talked me into expanding Wiggler from a one-piece band, or mostly a recording live project, to being a full trio. And the pitch they gave me is that because I have a tattoo here of the Wiggler motto, of Wiggler rocks tiny humans, exclamation point, question mark, exclamation point, rah, tiny humans. They said they wanted to be the tiny humans that Wiggler was rocking. So for the next decade or so, we played as Wiggler and the Tiny Humans. When Mark retired, because he's a software engineer with a good career and some real life prospects, and he retired from playing drums, we brought in, at the time, my daughter's boyfriend, and Nathan played drums with us for a while. We just shortened it back down to Wiggler just to keep it easy. A few years ago, I did a project called Swankomatic, where I tried to make the most uncomfortable electronica songs I could. So there's a band camp for Swankomatic. Did 6 years in Stand Against Fear from when it transitioned out of being Peace Corps, a cover band, started into originals 2016, and I left that band just a few months ago. Best of luck, guys. We've got Bridge Street Hooligans, was a band that came together with a couple of guys I'm playing with now in Backbreaker. Oh yeah, I'm in Backbreaker, another current band. I joined as the drummer, moved to guitarist, but Bridge Street Hooligans was a pandemic project band. It also brought in Jeremy Butler from D-Files and Gag Order and a bunch of other stuff. He's a questionable gentleman who likes to play in some bands. I've done a bunch of solo shows under Mr. Erik, which is usually my music name, usually with a guitar and a snare and kick pedal. Keeping time for myself. And I've got a new band coming together called the Hysterics. I was starting that up in 2016. I shelved that so I could do Stand Against Fear instead, but I'm whipping it back out. I like ideas, and I like expressing the ideas. I like trying to develop the ideas. I like being a musician because I have things that pop into my head, and this gives me an outlet of how I can take that idea and develop into something more. It doesn't always have to be music. I've done extensive creative writing. I'm a bit of a nerd, so I've played a whole lot of Dungeons and Dragons, so I've designed campaign settings. I've just been writing since my first attempt at it was 1975. I don't recall it, but I've got stories from my parents where they bought my younger sister a coloring book, and I didn't like the story in it. So I wrote a story on construction paper and drew pictures for it, and then probably got some parental help to staple it together so Heather could have a better coloring book. So it's the whole act of creating that drives me, and music is the great outlet for it. I sometimes think of myself like a shark, that if you stop swimming, you drown. I need to keep creating stuff and keep making new stuff to give myself the dopamine boost of creating something and that accomplishment to then keep me going and make the next thing. So the thing I love about the music is making those ideas and fleshing them out and building parts on them. And I'll throw some love at Mark Bertola, particularly, Tiny Red Human from Wiggler and the Tiny Humans. He is a good sound engineer, and he tended to encourage the ridiculous ideas. And for, say, Zombie Girl from Outer Space, from Coffins and Coffee, we sort of on the fly brainstormed together and came up with a zombie chorus, where at the end, the zombie girl, zombie, zombie, zombie girl, zombie girl. That's just the two of us on various vocal effects. But working with a guy who's got that technical skills and the openness to creativity, that was a It was a great experience. So thanks, Mark. The thing I don't like about music is it's quite a bit like herding cats. That, especially now I'm 50. It was a lot different when I was 20 years old and everyone's got the aspiration and everyone wants to do something. But now as I'm a 50-year-old man who probably should know better. It's a pain in the ass trying to find 4 or 5 other people, or even 2 other people for a power trio of people who live close enough to make it practical, have an inclination that they want to do this. They have the time. That's a big factor. They have the time to be able to do it. And they like the particular subgenre of punk rock you like. Because the guy who likes Screeching Weasel may not be the guy who likes Conflict, may not be the gal who likes the Dead Kennedys, or so on. Steve, our illustrious host of this channel, likes New York hardcore. I don't. I don't like the Cro-Mags. I don't like Agnostic Front. No offense to anyone who does. It's just, it was more butch than I was. I like the Jello Biafra, the slightly lifting intellectual stuff, and not the, oh, I'm going to kick your ass stuff, because, well, one spoke to me more than the others. And because it's such a wide genre and so many different things, that it's tough to get people to walk in the same direction long enough to pull something together enough that you can develop these ideas and flourish, and sometimes do some shows and present them to people so you can get the feedback and say, am I completely out to lunch with these ideas, or is this a good song? And if people are nodding and singing along, there's a bit of a validation there. And punk rock in particular, it's really hurting cats, because I'm going to reference the International Noise Conspiracy again, because they did a song called United by Haircuts. That really sums up punk rock to me. That we're a bunch of people who, we are nonconformists who all follow the same general parameters for conformity, and we all have different ideas and different goals and different walks of life, but we throw on t-shirts from the same bands, we cut our hair the same way, and we call ourselves a movement. And sometimes we are, sometimes we aren't. And that's why I've done so many individual projects, that sometimes when I've got something that is completely up to lunch, like Swank-O-Matic, it's easier just to play it all myself and develop the idea myself than to try to explain to somebody what I'm trying to do, and then after I've explained it, try to convince them that it's a good idea and get them engaged and on board, so that this is a ridiculous idea. I'm going to help you do it. That's such a pain in the ass. So I'm probably going to keep playing. Oh, opa! There we go again. So I'm planning to keep playing in bands until I have no cartilage in my knees. I've got, the arthritis has taken over, and my guitar falls apart, and it's held together with stickers and sweat and blood and disappointment and failed dreams. But I don't know what, my goals now are different than they were when I was 20. I have no aspirations to be a rock star. I'm not planning to sell any records. I'm just having fun with some friends who want to do the same thing I am. And if people happen to like what we're doing, we're all having fun together. And if you don't like what I'm doing, I don't care, because I like what I'm doing and I'm having fun with it. Go make your own stuff. Start your own fucking band. All right, favorite food? Well, my first love. Oh, that's the wrong arm. Say, black coffee. I'm cutting down on my coffees. I'm down to 2 cups a day. I drink a 120-ounce coffee, and then I chase it with a 30-ounce coffee. So black coffee. Also, I love curry. I can eat curry every meal, every day, all the time. That got me into hot sauce, and now I'm a hot sauce guy. Soysauce.ca. I put hot sauce on everything all the time, every meal, breakfast, lunch, dinner, dessert hot sauce. I don't like hot sauce and coffee because the hot temperature and the hot sauce, they don't mesh well, but hot sauce on everything all the time. This may be an esoteric answer, but I don't think there are any useless talents. Any talent you have serves some kind of a purpose. Either it's entertaining, or it creates something, or it produces something, or it nurtures something. Every talent has a purpose. If it is called a useless talent, it's because it fits a segment of skills that aren't useful for capitalism. It's not employable, you're not making something, so that's considered a useless skill. That said, there is one thing I used to do at parties because gentleman Jeff Anderson from Four Story Forehead Turd Burglars, now the Responsibles, thought this was the funniest damn thing, is the nose flute. There you go. All right. Well, thank you all for watching. I want to thank Steve for putting this together. If you haven't watched the rest of the Stronger Than Ever videos, I highly recommend it. Steve's done a wonderful job here of documenting a bunch of very interesting people from the punk rock, metal, music scene around the greater Hamilton area. A bunch of very interesting people, and also me. There's also a lot of very, very good videos of bands. A few bands I've been in. There's the absolute fastest Wiggler set we ever played. It was a 35-minute set we played in 25 minutes. There's a whole bunch of Stand Against Fear on there. There's a bunch of other bands that I haven't been in, but I've played with. Adelita, Barbed Wire Braces. Dang. Those are the first two that come to mind. Just all the bands. I think there's Forgotten Rebels on there. It's a bunch of New York City hardcore. It's a great document of the scene. So thank you for watching. Thanks to Steve again for doing what you're doing to document all of this for us. And thank you all for supporting Steve as he's doing this. Like and follow, subscribe, all that.